Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast. Using my sportscasting background, I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players to gain more insight on what makes this team go. As the Detroit Lions enter a new gritty era, we'll look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we take a look back at the Detroit Lions Week 12 Thanksgiving Day game against the Green Bay Packers. We'll discuss the probably unexpected 29-22 loss by most fans to the Green Bay Packers. We're going to touch on what went well, any pivotal moments in the game, concerns and takeaways, as well as any major storylines coming out of this contest. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
Hey, this is Rob Rubik. Stay tuned for more great insight from This Is Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
I'm joined, as usual, today by James Cook, senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. You can also hear him on the Get Around podcast. It drops on Mondays. James, good to be talking to you here on this Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah.
It's tough this late in the day after the game we saw, but as we get into it and discuss this game that is going to be a tough one to discuss, I want to remind the listeners, please hit that subscribe or like button. It is helping us build momentum. We are chugging along here, and let's talk about what we liked. And I'm going to like that the Lions didn't give up on this one. It might sound, very blah or very vague, but I mean, if I want to look at something, I like that they didn't give up even in the final minutes. I appreciate that.
There is that. There were some positives in this game. I mean, there's definitely some good things. For as flat as they came out, they made it a close game. The running game was very effective. I think they went away from that maybe a little too much, considering that they didn't have an insurmountable lead. I think they could have just still kept grinding and trying to get some long drives out there and put some points on the board.
If you look, Montgomery and Gibbs averaged 4.7 and 4.9 yards a carry, to your point. So that's a great observation.
Exactly. But I mean, only 26 carries, and you would think that if you're running the ball that effectively, you would keep going and run the ball even more. Because it's not like the game was out of hand. It was, it was a decent deficit at times, but it was never a blowout necessarily or anything where you have to abandon the run to try to conserve clock till the very end. So that was a little perplexing. Why something that they were having so much success at, they went away from, especially when their pass protection was so not good.
And we're going to get to those things we didn't like. But you're right, the running game was good. And I'm going to tell you, if the ball got into the air, the receivers were making things happen. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown had his 9 catches for 95 yards. Khalif Raymond had 5 for 90 on 5 targets. Jamison Williams looked good. Sam Laporta looked good. I mean, we had some great receptions there. The receivers did some good work, but maybe they had a hard time getting open, and that may have led to some other issues. But when the ball got towards them, they were making plays. So I liked that. Is there anything else you were liking about this?
The defense, in large part wasn't that horrible. They picked on Jerry Jacobs. It seemed like they went into this game with a plan that we're not going to throw at Cam Sutton. We're going to go at Jerry Jacobs. His 7 tackles reflects that. When you see a corner having 7 tackles, that's either really good or really bad. So, they picked on him a bit. But aside from that, I mean, I don't think the defense was that horrible in a player-on-player evaluation. I just don't think that the plan was good.
Well, yeah, I hear you on the defense part, because at first when I looked at this, I watched the game and I was like, man, that defense was a mess. I mean, your first impression is Green Bay comes all the way down. They hit that big play to start the game and come down and get a touchdown. And I was like, man, the defense was a bummer in this. But then I kind of looked at it. I went back and looked at some stats, and I kind of thought about some situations. And the defense gave up 6 points in the second half and 9 in the last 3 quarters total. And out of those 20 points in the first quarter, only, 14 or 13, I forget when I think it was 14. 14 were given up because 6 was on that fumble. So the defense didn't really do that bad. And those 6 points that they gave up late were because the Lions went for it deep in their own territory on a fake play and didn't get it. So ultimately, the defense didn't really do that bad.
No, the first quarter and into the second quarter, the defense did pretty poorly. After that,
Yep.
it was not bad. I was disappointed though that the Packers win the toss and choose to have the ball. So that tells you right there that they're going to be aggressive. And they didn't cover the long pass on that very first play. And that started it. And, so just, I don't know. It just didn't seem like they came in very prepared for this game. I don't know if it was whether they thought, oh, it's the short week. They're not going to be prepared either. We have the better team. We're just going to win this game. You hope not, but that's what it kind of looked like.
Well, let me talk about one more thing I liked, and then we'll start getting into those things that concerned us and we didn't like, because there's definitely a number to talk about. And I'm going to talk about the third quarter, because we opened the third quarter with a touchdown drive. And then we stopped Green Bay on their first drive. That's how you needed to open this thing. We made it a 23-14 game. And that was a best start we have had to a third quarter all season when we needed it. Unfortunately, we didn't go and make big steps or even baby steps after that. But I got to say, we finally saw a good opening to the third quarter.
I mean, that's good. Yeah. That they had, but they just wasn't enough to overcome yet another slow start.
And you're right. Coach Campbell even talked about that, about having his team ready. Here's what he had to say.
When we're not all in sync or we're not on the same page and we have a conversion or we don't have a conversion, we're not on the same page, then Goff has to hold it a little bit longer, then it just, everything goes hand in hand. Or if our details aren't good enough on the perimeter, it just, everybody's got a hand in it. It's all of us. So, we just didn't do well enough, We didn't do well enough. And that's really ultimately on me, because those guys were ready to go. That team was ready to go. They played well. When we come back, everybody's going to be challenged, as well as myself. I already feel challenged. And, this is how we should want it. You should want to know that everybody's going to give you your best shot, and they're coming in. You better be ready to go. You got to play clean football. We just have to. And everything's got to start with the turnovers. We can't turn the ball over. We got to find a way to get takeaways. Let's start there, and then we'll figure the rest out.
So Coach Campbell accepted that. He said, yes, he put the ownership on him and said that was the case. And so what were some of the things that really frustrated you or you did not like in this game?
Well, it's the fourth game in a row where they've come out in the first half and really struggled, and then not gotten it together until the second half. You've got Baltimore, San Diego, Chicago, Green Bay. All of those defense horrible in the first half.
Yeah.
And just put them in a hole. And, and as good as the offense was, they weren't able to dig themselves out from it. But, 2 out of those 4 times. And those other 2 times was just barely.
Well, and you look at it, the 3 turnovers, the 3 fumbles by Goff. I mean, that first one was just the killer one, right? That one right there, that hurt the most. But 3 more turnovers on offense. A lot of the drives just stalled. And the Lions, went for it like 5 times on 4th down. They were only 1 for 5, though. And I think the one that they got was like really late in the game. And so it just showed that how many times they had to go for it. And they still couldn't convert in a lot of those situations. So that was really frustrating.
Yeah, and the failed fake punt. I get what they were trying to do, but even being aggressive, I just don't agree with that call in that situation. But I think that he was trying to catch them off guard, thinking that they wouldn't think even I would do this. And when I saw the play and when I saw Jalen Reeves-Maybin moving prior to the play and setting himself up and like moving a yard over before it was snapped, I'm like, oh my God, are they going to try a fake punt here?
And I actually said almost something similar. I said, listen, I said, are they going to be gutsy here? Like, I kind of had that feeling because this is what they did in the Kansas City game in the season opener. We loved it because it worked, right? And that's the thing we got to remember. If it works, we love it. But, also, how is the flow of the game, and is that work? And Dan
True.
Campbell came
True.
out and said it was a mistake. He admits that that was a mistake to put his team in that situation because the defense wasn't doing a bad job at that point, and they weren't. So what did you have to add to that?
Yeah, I think doing those kind of things is much easier to do when you're the underdog, like against Kansas City, than when you're in a game where you should win, where you came in as a 7.5, 8.5 point favorite. I mean, so I get the reasoning for doing it, but in that situation, I wouldn't have done that. I would
Yeah,
have punted, buried him deep, and let your defense hopefully stop him.
that was one of those turning points in the game. I agree. That was a turning point because then it put us in a bad situation and it allowed the Packers to score again. And so that allowed the Packers to score again and add more points. Those are the only points the Lions defense gave up in the second half, by the way, was the 6 points on that touchdown. Um, obviously the defense did not get much of a pass rush. Jordan Love had a lot more time to throw today than Jared Goff did. I'm going to say we missed Jonah Jackson today. And there was a play in the early, I think, third quarter. It was a screen pass to Laporta. And he was going to gain a ton of yards, but the left guard missed a block. And then, I mean, it would have been a big gain. We ended up getting stopped on that drive. We went for it on fourth down and we didn't get it and we didn't get any points. And so that
When was
would have
that one?
been what's that?
When was that one?
That was early in the third. That was in the third quarter, or maybe it was
Okay.
early fourth quarter. Could have been early fourth, but yeah, I think it was early fourth quarter, and that was that screen pass. And there were blockers out there, but one guy was not blocked, and I think the left guard missed it, but somebody missed it out there. And if that block is made, Laporta's got 15, maybe 10 to 15 yards, maybe 20. It's a first down. The drive's inside the 40, maybe the 35. And there were a couple of plays that we missed our left guard today, and that was a pivotal moment right there because that was a change.
Yeah, and when they even changed guards during the game, they started Colby Sorsdahl, and he struggled badly in the first half. And then they substitute out and they put
Awasika
Coyote
in.
Awashika in, and the offense seemed to, he had some nice blocks that touchdown drive in the third quarter. He had some real nice blocks, and seemed to be able to handle Frank Clark and those interior tackles and even the ends when they stunted him inside of the Packers that were giving the Lions fits in the first half. He seemed to handle that a little bit better. He had a mistake or so later on in the game, but he seemed to handle that a lot better than Sorsdahl, who just looked over his head in the first half.
Yeah, and the other thing, I guess, if we go down to the fourth quarter again, the Lions got the ball back with 11 and a half minutes to go. And they took a drive for 6 minutes. And they didn't seem to be moving too fast during that drive. And they got it down to the 15-yard line, first down and 10. And they got 0 points. And obviously, they were down by like 15. So they needed a touchdown. A field goal wasn't going to do any good. But to not get in the end zone there, that really hurt. Because then, you're down to like 5 or 6, like 6 minutes left, something like that. And there just wasn't enough time to get the double responses as we saw because they had to use a timeout later and whatnot. So going for such a long drive with so much time and not getting points. Now, if they'd gotten points, you could say it's not a big deal, but they were leaving themselves no room for error again.
Yeah. I mean, they managed the last 5 minutes of the game against the Bears perfectly. And you're only going to be able to pull that off so many times. They couldn't do it tonight.
No, they could not. So let's look at the major storylines coming out of this. The first one is the Lions' 3-game winning streak has been snapped. They fall to 8-3. They currently lead the Vikings by 2 games. I believe the Vikings are 6-5 in the division race. You're probably thinking that number 1 seed talk is going to slow down a little bit around Detroit, around national media, and people are going to gravitate a little bit more towards the Philadelphia Eagles. So how are you feeling about this storyline, where the record is and where things stand overall?
I mean, the loss isn't, a single loss isn't that bad for where they're at. Like we said, it's ahead of where we expected them to be this season. It's costing you some of that momentum. It's costing you that possibility of getting the number 1 seed. which is the difference between playing San Francisco and Philadelphia in the playoffs to only having to play one of them. So that can be a big difference. We saw last year what one bad game in Carolina ended up, and that cost you the playoffs when you were the hottest team in the NFL. This bad game could be another Carolina game. The Ravens game, I think, didn't end up becoming that because we've seen how good the Ravens are since then. But Green Bay is a totally beatable opponent. They came into this game beat up. They're missing their starting running back. They're missing one of their top 4 receivers. They're missing their starting tight end. They're missing a lineman. They're missing 3/4 of their secondary and their best linebacker. And the Lions could not take advantage of that. That is frustrating.
Rightfully so. I don't think any Lions fan felt like this was going to be the outcome of this game. Now, if you look, they're 8-3. There are 6 games left. Before the season, I predicted the Lions to go 11-6, which would mean they only win half of the final games. And then, at the midway point, I upped it up to 12-5. And the thing is, when you do well early, that raises expectations and I don't want to say requirements, but maybe requirements by the fan who says, okay, well, this is where we are. This is where we need to get to. But we know that, I mean, I didn't think the Lions were going to go, undefeated the rest of the season. Some people may have. Now, this wasn't one of the games I was thinking they were going to lose, a home game against a beat up team, but they are a division rival. So overall, I'm still hoping we can get that number 2 seed. That's kind of been my goal from the beginning. It wasn't that I don't want the 1 seed. You'd be foolish not to want it. But I'm sitting here thinking if we can get the 2 seed, we would have a home playoff game to start out against the lowest wild card, and it would guarantee us a second round home game if we win the first one. But I think we kind of got to, maybe slow down that talk of the 1 seed and focus on we got to win the division. And Coach Campbell said, it's not going to be easy. He goes, we didn't think we would just put things on cruise control. Now, I think a lot of fans were thinking it's on cruise control. We've got the division wrapped up, and it was kind of looking like that. But Minnesota's come alive. And, Green Bay has played well the last couple of weeks. We should remember that as well. So those are some of my thoughts on the big picture there. Any echoes or any disagreements with that, James?
Yeah, we thought, the second half of the schedule was a cakewalk a month ago. And the Cowboys game was the only hard game aside from San Diego. That the Cowboys and San Diego were the only 2 difficult games the second half of the season. Suddenly, almost all of those games have become difficult games. The Vikings are playing much, much better. The Bears are playing better. As we saw, the Packers are playing better. The Broncos have suddenly discovered how to play defense again. And the Saints are fighting for a division title. There's no gimmies anymore on the schedule.
I agree with you on that. And what are your thoughts on this? Before the previous show, talking to Coach Angers, we were talking about how the Lions got lucky with those last 2 victories, and he said, sometimes you learn more during a loss than escaping with a narrow victory. And, I think part of that might be the feeling you have inside of what it feels like to lose and stuff like that. So do you think that could be a takeaway that could be somewhat helpful to the Lions? Not that you ever want to get a loss in the column, but how that feels, how you react to it?
I think it could. I think it hopefully restores the drive that we, didn't really see in that first half from the Lions. And that getting Jonah Jackson back in there, hopefully maybe next week, will definitely help that offensive line out. But Graham Glasgow, even at points in this game, was ineffective. The Packers' defensive line was dominating that game. It's surprising.
Well,
I mean, it's their one healthy unit on defense. So, that's not surprised that was the best unit. But, I mean, they were doing incredibly well and pressuring Goff all game. And those fumbles were the result of pressure, not him just coughing the ball up.
Let me ask you right there then. Let's talk about Jared Goff, because I've heard a lot of negative stuff about Goff coming out of this game. And Goff, you're right, did not have a great game by any means. fumbling the ball was probably the biggest issue, right? He had 3 fumbles. He was 29 of 44 for 332 yards and 2 touchdowns. The fumbles were costly. But as you said, the defense getting up there and getting pressure on him affected a lot of that. He was getting hit a lot in this game. Coach Campbell was asked about it after the game. Here's what he had to say.
Well, I think some of these you feel like we're a little bit behind, and maybe that's the cause of some of it. But, we just, there's a little uneasiness. We just got to get back to what we do, playing a little more rhythm. And, this isn't something where I want to get into panic mode. I've got some time here to just look at a couple of things, and see where we can get a little more efficient. But at the same time, this is the same team that's been here all year. Offense, defense, Goff's the same quarterback. We clean a couple of things up, and I think we'll get back in a rhythm and be just fine.
And he basically said, don't overreact. Goff's the same guy. This is the same team. We need to clean up a couple of things. So, James, how are you feeling about Jared Goff after this game and probably after the last few games?
He's got to cut down on the turnovers. He didn't throw any interceptions in this game, so that's good. His accuracy was pretty good for the most part. There was a few times where his accuracy was thrown off because he was throwing on the run, or under duress. So aside from that, he was accurate. He was making good decisions with throwing the ball. It was just the fumbles, and the fumbles came from the pressure. The Packers defensive line was, I think the stat they kept showing was that it was 50% of his dropbacks he was pressured by their defensive line, and they weren't really sending anybody else other than the front four for the most part. They weren't blitzing because they couldn't. Their linebackers and their DBs were so depleted that they couldn't leave those guys out on an island. It's a little frustrating that the Lions weren't able to take advantage of that. Jonah Jackson certainly would have helped, but I don't know if it would have even solved it. That defensive line just looked great, and even Graham Glasgow didn't look great in this game. And Ragnow left for a play here or there, and the whole offensive line kind of got beat. Decker got beat for that sack on 4th down.
Yeah, not having enough time definitely impacted Goff. As far as where do I see him, I mean, I've even got messages from people saying, do not extend Goff. All right, it's time to move on. And I'm calling that an overreaction because I think you could look at, and I'm just going to go low on this. I think you could look at 20 teams in the NFL that would probably be happy to have Jared Goff on their roster right now. All right.
Yeah.
And so, is he perfect? No. Right. What's he not perfect at? Well, he can't scramble as well as a lot of elite quarterbacks, but does he have very good accuracy? Yeah. You just look at last week. Can he compartmentalize and lead you in a comeback when things haven't been going well? Yeah, he is a very good quarterback. I'm happy with him as our quarterback. Now, again, admitting he's not perfect, but the team itself was far from perfect today. And so I'm not going to overreact and say it's time to get rid of him and make wholesale changes because we're 8-3. And so let's look at that 8-3. We kind of talked about where we are, the seeding and all that. But James, we came off an ugly loss. Ugly because we wanted to win and we wanted to win by a lot. It's not like we got blown out and we beat ourselves, even though Green Bay made some plays. But we had to come from behind against the Bears team. And you said it. A lot of these teams have been getting better. So going into them, the average person is thinking, oh, we should walk over this team. And we have walked over a couple of teams this year, but we didn't walk over the last few. So how are you feeling about this season right now at 8-3 and where we are?
Overall good. This game is obviously a reality check. But overall things are going good. The Lions are, in the broader sense of the NFL, healthier than a lot of teams, despite how many injuries they have had. If you look at a lot of other teams, it's a lot worse. So that's good. They didn't really get a whole lot of other significant injuries this week, so that's good. Their pieces are there. They're involving Jameson Williams in the offense a little bit more. The numbers are not necessarily there, but when they've gone to him, the production has been there, and and he's contributing in other ways, as we've pointed out before. And if you look at Goff and his accuracy, look at the touchdown pass to Laporta.
Totally.
That was a dime. Right between two defenders. For a touchdown. So I mean that was a great thing. One of the things I was frustrated with was that the Packers were getting so much pressure, and the Lions didn't, other than just swapping Awashika for Colt Sorsdahl at guard, they didn't really do a whole lot to adjust to that. They didn't keep the tight ends in the block more to help. They didn't maybe put Rodriguez in at fullback a little bit more, just to kind of give Goff a personal protector, sort of, back there.
He
Somebody to
did
pick up.
catch his first pass, though. That was kind of incredible.
And that was a nice catch, too. That was a great catch. I would have just liked to seen them, if, do those, to just put him in the backfield and just have him there as a personal protector to pick up the blitz.
Yeah.
Whoever gets beat, you chip that guy and give Goff another second or two to get rid of the ball. But they didn't really do anything like that. They kept running 4 wide and just not giving the linemen any help.
Well, at 8-3, if you would have told me 8-3 to start the season, I would have taken that from you every day and twice on Tuesday, right? I would have taken that before the season started.
Absolutely.
So here's the thing, though, because we started off so well, expectations rise. And so my question for you is, you, me, Harrison, when we all spoke about this, we said win a playoff game. That is our thing for success this year. And you and I kind of want them to win the division and a playoff game. So let me ask you, is winning the division and a playoff game still enough for this team? Would that still make it a successful season?
I think it would be. Getting past that round in the playoffs is not an easy task. And the NFC is not as easy as people thought it was going to be. But you win the division, the Lions go maybe 4-2 in these last 6. And you're looking at getting that number 2 seed. You're looking at hosting the 49ers for the
or the Vikings.
Maybe. I still don't know how much I trust the Vikings. Their defense is not great. They're improved, and they'll hang around and they'll beat some teams, but I don't trust them as a team to win every week.
Well, you said hosting the 49ers. You mean like in the second round if they win their first round? Because the 49ers are probably going to win their division.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically the NFC semis. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then if they win that, then you get potentially the Eagles for the NFC title game.
So the thing I've been saying is win the division, win a playoff game, and then see where it goes from there. But my goal is to do that because we are not perfect. We know there's flaws on our defense. We know our offensive line did not hold up as well as we've seen it in the past. Again, I said this in the last show. There is not a perfect team out there. And there's a lot of circumstantial stuff. If that fumble is not a fumble on Jared Goff, we're looking at a very different game. That one thing really changed things a lot. And so that's my thought is, we're still at the same spot. Win the division, win a playoff game. Those are not easy things to do.
Yeah. I mean, if that's Tom Brady throwing that ball, that's not a fumble. And then the Lions maybe go down and score, and it's a tie game instead of a 2-score game.
Right. And again, like I said, if the Lions, if it was easy to do that, the Lions would have won a playoff game or more or their division, more recently than the early 90s. And so, James, they've got a few extra days off now before they hit the road to the Saints. We don't think the Saints game's going to be easy. They're playing a little bit better, I believe. They're fighting for their division, and the Lions have a little more time to regroup. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I'd like to see them continue to just pound the ball with the run. They've got the best 1-2 running combo in the NFL right now.
I agree.
They got to keep, and their offensive line as a run blocking unit is probably the best in the league. If not, it's definitely top 5. Pass blocking, it's top 10, I would say. So play to your strength, run the ball, pound the ball, take time of possession, keep your defense off the field for a while, man.
I agree. We have an amazing running back combination, and there weren't that many running lanes there today with some hard running. But if we don't have the turnovers, maybe that can be a different story as well. And so, yeah, I think Campbell is a run first type of coach, and that's what he wants to be. We're pretty balanced, and so hopefully we can get back to that and some of the identity. And you know what, this game can be a great wake up call, a great reawakening, if you will, for the Lions, and we can get a couple in a row here coming up. James, thanks for joining the show. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
And thank you so much for tuning in, folks. You can find all the episodes at notthesameoldlions.com. If you're listening on YouTube, please hit that like button. And while you're at it, tell your friends about the show. Please subscribe regardless of your listening platform. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.